Jai Shri Radha Madhava Shri Brinda Ki Jai. Jai Vishnu Pad Brahman Sata Shri Madhava Charana Arvinda Bhakti Vedanta Gosai Maharaj Shri Gopal Ki Jai. Ananta Gadi Vaishnava Bhakta Vinda Ki Jai. Sri Sri Radha Golokananda Bhagwan Ki Jai. Kore Pavanavata Shri Srinivas Gauranga Grandharaja Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. So,
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my respectful obeisances. Sadhu Shri Prabhupada.
yes.
Jyoti Sharup Prabhu is has some emergency, is driving. So his video will be off for about 30 minutes within this section of the class. So
yes, that's okay. So he can put the video off, no?
Yeah.
It's better the video is off because otherwise going to be too much movement. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Shri Prabhupada. So we start with text 24. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devyam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Grantaraja Bhagavatam Ki Jai. So we will complete the 5 verses in text 24 to 28, which is chapter 3, the Lord's pastimes out of Vrindavan. And then we will move on to the 4th chapter, which is the last chapter in the unit 8 of the Bhakti Vaibhava course. Purvam kadachit kriddadbhir yadu bhoja kumarake kobidamanayos. Once upon a time, great sages were made angry by the sporting activities of the princely descendant of the Yadu and Bhoja dynasties. And thus, as desired by the Lord, the sages cursed them. So, read the purport. The associates of the Lord who were playing the part of princely descendants of Yadu and Bhoja dynasties, who were not ordinary living entities. It is not possible that they would offend any saintly man or sage, nor could the sages, who are all pure devotees of the Lord, be influenced to anger by any of the sporting activities of the princes born in the holy dynasty of Yadu or Bhoj. Wherein the Lord appeared as a descendant, the cursing of the prince by the sage was another transcendental pastimes of the Lord to make a show of anger. So this is actually sowing the seed of the descent that will be there among the Yadukula. And with that, the destruction of the descendants of the Lord will be arranged by the kind mercy of the Lord. The princes were cursed in order that one may know that even the descendants of the Lord, who could never be vanquished by material nature, were subjected to the reactions of anger by great devotees of the Lord. So by great devotees of the Lord, we could actually come to a position where we can be cursed by them in no matter what. And there's another way of looking at how Jay and Vijay were cursed by this person, the 4 Kumaras also. So one should therefore take care and attention not to commit an offense at the feet of a devotee. Prabhupada always makes a point, and we know that. And he always makes the point that offending devotees is not such a good idea. If anyone's serious about devotional life. So then after that curse, a few months passed. Siddhatha kripayayir masayir vrishne bhojadham kakadayi vayu prabhasham sangsritha ratherdeva mimohitaha. A few months passed, and then bewildered by Krishna, all the descendants of Vrishni, Bhoja, and Nandaka, who were incarnations of demigods, went to Prabhash. while those who were eternal devotees of the Lord did not leave but remained in Dwarka. So this is a very interesting point. Prabhupada doesn't put any purport in this. I will see some information here also. So here, it is said that the Vrishnis, the Bhojas and the Andakas, there were 3 clans of people who actually were Dwarkavasis. The Vrishnis, the Bhojas, and the Andakas. But Vrishnis eternally remain in Dwarka. They do not leave. They remain there, invisible to the eyes of the common people, because they are eternally residents of Dwarka. Their going was an appearance created by the Lord, this Deva Mohita. This is what he said here. Ratei Deva Mohita. The phrase can also mean that the Devata portions of the Vrishnis became bewildered and went to Prabhash. There's 2 ways to look at it. There was a combination of 3 clans, the Bhoja, the Vrishnis, and the Andakas, who constituted the inhabitants of Dwarka. And the Vrishnis eternally remain, and the Bhojas and Andakas went. And the other part is to understand that each, like for example, some of the great personalities who were associates of the Lord had combined with different devatas. So the devata portions of them went for the to Prabhasha, where they would get intoxicated and fight and so on. So that's what it means here. Prabhupada doesn't put. So we will not discuss any further. So 26 to 27. Okay. Tatra snatto pitrin devan rishing chaiva tadambasha tarpa idvatha vipribhya gava bahu guno dadu. After arriving there, all of them took bath and with the water of this place of pilgrimage. They offered their respects to the forefathers, demigods, and great sages. And to satisfy them, they gave cows to the Brahmanas in royal charity. So it's a narrative. Prabhupada gives a very long purport, so we'll read the purport here. Okay? Hare Krishna. Among the devotees of the Lord, there are several divisions. And there, Prabhupada straight away goes into this explanation from Gita also, mainly Nitya Siddhas and Sadhana Siddhas. The Nitya Siddhas devotees never fall down to the region of the material atmosphere, even though they sometimes come into the material plane to execute the mission of the Lord. The sadhana siddha devotee are chosen from the conditioned souls, those who become perfected in devotional life by performance of sadhana bhakti, leading up to Krishna prema. So out of the sadhana devotees, there are mixed and pure devotees. Can anyone attempt to describe what is the meaning of mixed and pure devotees? I'm hoping that you've read the purports. Anyone? Okay, the mixed, yeah. The mixed devotees are enthusiastic about fruitive activities and also philosophical speculation, which implies that there are some devotees, they are karma mishra and jnana mishra. They come from that angle. The example of also is Maitreya is a jnana mishra. He followed the parampara of the Charkumara, who was also the jnana mishra approach. And karma mishra approach may also be there. And pure unalloyed devotees are a different category. So the pure devotees, they can both become pure unalloyed devotees, but they approach from Karma Mishra and Jnana Mishra. The pure devotees are free from all these mixtures, mixtures meaning Mishra. This we're saying it. From all these mixtures, and are completely absorbed in the service of the Lord, regardless of how, where they are situated. Pure devotees of the Lord are not enthusiastic to put aside their service to the Lord. Pure devotees of the Lord are not enthusiastic to put aside their service to the Lord in order to go visit holy places or pilgrimage. The pure devotees are free from all these mixtures and are completely absorbed in the service of the Lord, regardless of how and where they are situated. Pure devotees of the Lord are not enthusiastic to put aside their service to the Lord in order to go visit holy places of pilgrimage. What a statement. Pure devotees of the Lord are not enthusiastic to put aside their service. This is something that was quite common in ISKCON in the early days. When as devotees we were living in the temple, then yearly some devotees would be selected to go to what do you call to the give me a minute please, this phone is causing problem. So some devotees would be selected to go for yatra, but then that preaching would always be there that we have to stay in our service is more important. But it's interesting, Prabhupada also puts that here, pure devotees of the Lord are not enthusiastic to put aside their service to the Lord in order to go visit holy places of pilgrimage. A great devotee of the Lord in modern times, Sri Narottam Das Thakur, has sung like this: to visit holy places of pilgrimage is another bewilderment of the mind, because devotional service to the Lord at any place is the last word in spiritual perfection. Now that is a very, very powerful statement by Srila Prabhupada. We stay fixed in our service and no need to change, to travel here, to travel there, because the best thing we can do is engage in our service. Even the Prabhupada did say it'd be nice that we can visit the holy places. And some devotees actually make it a habit to go and engage and stay in the holy dham. So there's many different varieties. We cannot criticize, but this is an interesting point that Prabhupada, we cannot actually say otherwise, because people who live in the holy places also fortunate souls. But even when we are staying in the holy places of pilgrimage, Vrindavan, Mathura, Vrindavan, and Jagannath Puri or Mayapur, we can engage in devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because that's the most important aspect of our devotional life. So Narottam Das Thakur has sung that visiting these places of pilgrimage is another bewilderment of the mind. For pure devotees of the Lord who are completely satisfied with the transcendental loving service of the Lord, there's hardly any necessity to visit the various places of pilgrimage. And you see that sometimes. Some devotees, they are very busy in their service, very happy and busy in their service. Especially very fixed up, sometimes, very fixed up person in devotional service, they hardly go anywhere. They stay in their service. And there's hardly a necessity to visit places of pilgrimage. But those who are not so advanced have the prescribed duty of visiting pilgrimage sites and regularly performing the rituals. And Prabhupada is saying, but those who are not so advanced. So real advancement means being fixed in our devotional service. If you take it from what Prabhupada speaks in this purport, real devotional service, real engagement in constantly doing your seva is more important. And the part of the princely putting a note here. Thank you. The part of the princely order of the Yadu dynasty who went to Prabhash, perform all duties to be done in a place of pilgrimage, and offer their past actions to their forefathers and others. So Prabhash Kshetra, near Prabhashetra, not very far, is a Somnath Mandir. It's considered a very, very pious and religious place. So as a rule, every human being is indebted to the Lord, the demigods, the great sages, other living entities, people in general, forefathers, etc. Okay? So we are indebted to these 5 persons, 5 category of people, 5 categories. We're indebted to God, we're indebted to the demigods, the great sages, the other living entities, people in general, and also to our Pitri, our forefathers. So for various contributions received from them. Thus, everyone is obliged to repay the debt of gratitude. The Yadus who went to the Prabhash pilgrimage site performed their duties by distributing land, gold, and well-nourished cows in royal charity, as described in the following verse. The Brahmanas were not only given well-fed cows in charity, but also gold, gold coins, bedding, clothing, animal skins, seats, blankets, horses, elephants, girls, and sufficient land for maintenance. So this is just the normal charity that was given. They were given gold coins, they were given cows, and younger Brahmanas were offered, daughters in marriage and so on and so forth, which is called Kanyadan. So let me read this purport because it shows a little bit of the duty of Kshatriyas, Brahmanas, and also Prabhupada makes a distinction to explain about the Brahma Bandhus. So all these charities were meant for the Brahmanas whose lives were devoted entirely to the welfare of society, both spiritually and materially. So the modus operandi of a Brahmana is he lives simply. Whatever facility has given, he's satisfied, he's santushta. He is very equipoised, he is very balanced, and he lives with whatever comes of its own accord, depending on his particular situation. Therefore, he is considered to be a person who lives by the mercy of the Lord, because he's situated in Brahmana means one who is situated in Brahman. He has spiritual knowledge. He understands Brahman. And often a Brahmana will resort to begging or receiving charity, which is considered his dharma. He can beg alms for his sustenance. And when he has extra, he will give it away. Dana and pratigraha. Pratigraha means anything extra, he gives away in charity. So the Brahmanas were not giving their services as paid servants. So a Brahmana, he never, ever goes and takes an employment or a job with someone else. He doesn't take a job with someone else. Okay? And no matter what the situation, he will live simply. But the modern economic situation is such that even, well-placed devotees sometimes go and find a job. They beat an engineer or an accountant or whatever, they're working for other people. Then we make so many compromises on the basis of our principles, our livelihood, and how we. So working by yourself is much higher than actually getting a job. And that was the previous Vedic arrangement. Everyone would work for themselves. And some of the lesser class of people, they would actually offer seva and service to the other varnas. They would offer seva to the other varnas. Hare Krishna Madhu. Yes. So it was arranged for some of the Brahmanas who were in difficulty for marriage to be given girls. Because they were poor. They will live simply. I would appreciate some of the devotees put there, because I'm only talking to 2 devotees and 7 names. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, please, in the next 2 minutes, I will put my video on. I'm
Okay.
with you. I'll just
I see
trying to finish something.
Putra Prabhu, are you in service or? I know Jyoti Swarup is driving. So, so the Brahmanas therefore had no economic problems. Why? Because the poor Brahmanas, the simple Brahmanas, would be given girls in marriage, and with the girls, they would be given dowry. So this principle of dowry was there. Hare Krishna Rasavan. So this principle of giving dowry was there because of the qualification of the Brahmanas. Because you are providing something in charity, and the Brahmanas live by charity. So it was never to do with anything like selling off your daughter or anything like that. No. And it was only given to Brahmanas. And as a principle, this is a bit of a strange thing. As a principle, when a grihastha person, whether a Vaishya or Kshatriya, he doesn't always take charity. He collects taxes, but he gives charity. And a Vaishya also, he contributes for the upliftment of the other classes because he is a main wealth earner in the community. So the person who is actually allowed to take charity is a Brahmana. A Brahmana is allowed to take charity and live by charity. The rest, they should actually give charity. So here, the Brahmanas therefore had no economic problems. Why? Because they will live by, but then they would live simply. They would be sure to live very simply. They would not have an extravagant lifestyle. So the Kshatriyas, kings, and rich mercantile, which is the Vaishyas, would provide them with all that they needed. And in exchange, the Brahmanas were completely devoted to the elevation. So that's what we are paying for. That's what we are paying, in a sense. That's why we're giving charity, is we're helping support the Brahmanas because they spend their time, jajan, jajan, patan, patan, dana, patigraha. They spend their time doing yajna, sacrificing their own life, and also performing sacrifices. And patan, patan, they study, they read, and they teach. So without them, society will go to very low levels of degradations. They'll go to the lower rungs of culture. So this education by the Brahmanas, so in one sense, is being slowly revived. As we understand, it's not based on birth or anything. I'm thinking about my own situation. It's like I always had a difficult time taking donations from people. For years, I never took anything. So it's like I have no choice now because I have no other thing except charity to live by. So I'm happy. I have the facility that Krishna's provided me, and I'm maintaining it, and I'm just living simply. So it's very nice. And my students and devotees are even contributing to buy me a laptop or whatever because my old one is growing. I'm not saying I'm a Brahmana, I'm a very low-class person, but at least I'm trying to do this service. So that way, so he said the Kshatriya kings and rich mercantile men would provide them with all that they needed. And in exchange, the Brahmanas were completely devoted to the elevation of society. That was the way of social cooperation between the different castes. Any comment, question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I just have a little comment. As we know, women, they are a symbol of materialism. So by giving charity, giving girls to Brahmanas, in a way, I think it's a kind of distraction also. Don't you think, Prabhu?
No. Women are mothers. Women are not Maya. Women are mothers. Women, everyone is born from the womb of a mother. And the reason that women are not allowed to give, to prostrate dandavat, is because the womb and the breast of the women are considered sacred. So this is erroneous thinking. women is Maya. They may represent, but then man is form of Maya for women and women is form of Maya for men. But that's not the right kind of thinking in Vedic culture. The one woman would be the wife of the Brahmana. All the other women will be mothers. So because Grihastha Brahmanas were actually the spiritual masters in society. Sannyasis would not be spiritual masters. They would preach because they were not traditionally in Vedic system. Sannyasis were not allowed to light fires. So how would they perform yajnas? So the real spiritual masters were the Grihasthas, Brahmanas. And you would see in the history of the Mahabharata and the history of Srimad Bhagavatam, only the great avadutas of the caliber of Shukadeva Goswami or the Char Kumaras or Narad Muni could not get married. And they were generally people of very high caliber. And the rest of them, they would get married and they would have children. And then they would actually be teachers. So when you see the rishis, whether it is Kashyapa, whether it is Angira, they were all married, Atri Muni, they were all married. And you see the story of Mother Devahuti, when even Lord Vishnu told Kardama Muni, don't worry. He said, I desire to have marriage. And so he said, yes, there is a very interesting proposition for you, a daughter of Swayambhuva Manu called Devahuti. Soon they will appear and they will ask for you to accept their daughter. She's of marriageable age. So I think we should not think like that. Okay. If I allow myself to give a humble advice in this class, yeah, we should not think like that. Yeah, we should think, thank you, Prabhu, you're so kind. And so we should think their mothers. And they are the better half of man. And that will go a long way in our Krishna consciousness movement. So when the Brahmana, that was the way of social cooperation between the different castes. When the Brahmanas class of caste gradually became easygoing, being fed by the society, although they had no. So then the degradation started, because then you would start to charge, you would start to ask money, and you will start to live very sumptuously, forgetting that the Brahmana is Sharala, he's simple. He is Denya, he's humble, he's tolerant. They would forget all these different things, right? And then they will start to become degraded by this principle. They will start to become degraded by this principle. And thus other members of society also gradually fell down from the social standard of progressive life. So because Prabhupada has made such an effort to explain this in a very sweet, simple language, I think we're spending some little time, honoring our divine grace by reading it carefully. And thus other members of society also gradually fell down from the social standard of progressive life. Progressive life means Varna and Ashrama, we generally go up and up towards Devi Varnashram, pleasing the Lord in our activities and doing all our activities, no matter what position we are in, for the satisfaction of Lord Sri Vishnu. Right, second canto. What is that verse? Anyone can remember? First canto, chapter 2, Divinity, Divine Service. That no matter what position we are, we should do activities that actually for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu. Swanu asthita pumsam vishaksena kathasuya nodpadayed yadiratim shamaevahi kevalam. That all our activities should be for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu. Anything else is just simple waste of time. That's what it means, progressive life. And swanu asthita pumsam, swanu stitha pumsam. Asthita means situation. Whatever personal situation we may be in, which means that we may be Vaishya, Brahmana, Shudra, Kshatriya. We may be Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas, whatever situation we may be in. For all humanity. Swanu asthita pumsam vishaksena katha suya. Right? By hearing the katha of the Supreme Lord. Nodpadayed yadiratim. If that doesn't bring our attachment to the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu, Nodpadayed yadiratim. Shramaihi vai kevalam. Our activities is simple waste of time. This is what Prabhupada is saying here. This is the verse you should all know by heart, preachers. Okay, so so when that is not bringing to progressive life, where we become more and more attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, then it is a simple waste of time. As described in Bhagavad Gita, the caste system is a creation of the Lord. What does that say in Gita? Chant 4:9. Come on. You should know that by heart too. Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam guna karma vibhagasa. 4:9. So, and the quality and the caste system is a creation of the Lord, arranged according to guna karma, quality of work. Rendered to society and not in terms of birthright, not janma, as falsely claimed in the present degraded society. So, okay, what is the question, Salika Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. Yeah, it's still on the topic we're discussing, though we've not gone out of it. In the whole of this section talking about Varnashram, I was just thinking, Kali Yuga is the difference between Kali Yuga and other ages has to do a lot with these characteristics or the symptoms of the age in terms of the degradation of principles. And when you were explaining, you were talking about a Brahmana never takes job. He never accepts an employed position. And but then you quickly added that in Krishna consciousness or in our modern times, we find that due to circumstances, and circumstances, that is a very important word, we find that devotees have to take job and do all of this. Could we now say, my question is, could we say that this compromise of our principles, which are related to development of Varnashram Dham, is affecting the progressive development of Krishna consciousness locally and globally?
No, Prabhupada didn't. Prabhupada said, because I didn't pay much attention to Varnashram, it didn't hamper the development of Krishna consciousness. He had more externally, more difficult situations to prevail upon, but he did successfully. I think the chanting of the holy name of Krishna, the reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, the association of devotees, trying to reside in a holy place, being favorably disposed to all devotees, these are enough things actually to push the Krishna consciousness movement. So, Srila Prabhupada had many things he said at different times. He said different things about Varnashram. When he had sannyasis fall down, he was considering, oh gosh, no, maybe Varnashram. But other times, Prabhupada did not so much care about Varnashram. Jaiva Dharma, Bhakti Vinod Thakur talks about Devi Varnashram. So we have a Varnashram in the world, but it's Asuri Varnashram, which means the divisions are there, but they are not properly guided towards a progressive life of attachment to the lotus feet of the Lord, right? So therefore, we have to practice in our own life, which means that we follow some semblance of the rules of Varnashram. Like, for example, Krishna tells Arjuna in Dwapara Yuga, in the Battle of Kurukshetra, he said, if you do not perform your duty, you will incur sin. So not behaving like a Kshatriya for Arjuna, he would actually incur sin. So there is no such thing as not performing your Varnashram duty and incurring sin in this age of Kali. Because in the age of Kali, Kalo Sutrasham Bhavaha, everyone is born in the lowest rung of the social ladder as a Shudra. Right? So then it doesn't mean, it's still devotees from all over the world, all over the African continent, Chinese continent, Japanese continent, everywhere, and other areas of the world, People are becoming Krishna conscious, whether it is Germany, people are becoming Krishna conscious, right? But if we have an agrarian system of maintaining communities and livelihoods, people have more time, I would guess. But then people are not inclined to living very simply also. Like one Swami Maharaj here, he bought 50 acres of land, and no one wants to go and live on that land. And I guess it's probably the same. You have a farm in Benin, no, in Nigeria. Anyone living there?
No.
No.
No one.
No one. So it's the same thing. Because people are not inclined towards that. So therefore, wherever they are, whatever position they are, we should encourage them to come to Krishna consciousness. I don't know whether that answers the question, but in Kali Yuga, we don't incur sin for. But what can be done? This is just the atmosphere we're living in. You want to add something to that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Prabhu. I think you've answered it very nicely, because I see that most often times devotees, just like we discussed also yesterday, sometimes devotees, even in Krishna consciousness, will get attracted to the flowery aspect of the Vedic literature, and then we want to sometimes hold on to some of these things which are not practically practicable in these modern times. And Prabhupada introduced Pancharatri Vedi process, whereby we just take the holy name and do the little process of devotion and service. But it's a very difficult thing to sink in, because it is right there in our scriptures. And just like even when we look at the story of Narada Muni and yesterday from the beginning of the Bhagavatam also, that was the line of discussion which emphasizes on the fact that devotees shouldn't be too attracted to or distracted by this sentiment of trying to rigidly hold on to some of these Varnashram principles, Varnashram Dharma principles.
Yes, yes. It is external. It is not necessary.
Yeah, that's what
external. It is not necessary for the advancement of the soul towards Krishna, lotus feet of Krishna. It is external, and in Gauranga, in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Ramananda Samvad, he says it is external, and nowhere it says that through Varnashram one can attain. Through Varnashram you can progressively, like Prabhupada used that word again here, we can progressively advance in our social structure and our Varna and Ashrama structure of the world. But even then, it is not a guarantee that by practice of the principles of Varnashram, we become smartas. We become smartas, and which means that we become ritualistic persons, not necessarily become advanced in devotional service. Devotional service is the last word, Prabhupada says. So we practice bhakti, we chant the holy name. It's a very nice feeling when you say this, because it's just like you think it's really great. We are devotees of Krishna, and it's like we are trying to be devotees of Krishna, and Prabhupada has been so kind to us. And to, don't worry about anything else. And this is external. And it is not a requirement to go back home, back to Godhead. And like I said, Prabhupada at different times said different things about Varnashram.
Yeah.
Right. So in context, so I mean, let's look at Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, our spiritual master here. Well, did he really push? I remember the year, the last time he went to, or the 2 years before, the 2005 or 2004, he was in Mayapur, and I wasn't there, but he gave a talk, and he said, if you try to create, I remember very clearly, he said, if you try to create Varnashram now in ISKCON, we will end up creating a caste system. I remember he said that.
You're right.
Chaitanya Prem Prabhu, you want to add something? Thank you for giving your darshan.
Oh, thank you. Carry on, just carry on. You said it all.
Okay, 28.
I just wanted to mention, Prabhu, the verse you are referring to actually is 1 Canto chapter 2, text number 8. It's Trama Eva equivalent verse you're talking about.
Divinity, divine service, right?
Yeah. Yeah, divinity and divine service. So sometimes you just want to allow other people to speak.
Okay. So 28. Anang chorurasham tebhya dattva bhagavatarpanam govipratha savah suraha pranenur bhuvi murdhavi. Thereafter they offered the Brahmanas highly delicious foodstuffs, first offered to the personality of God and offered their respectful obeisances by touching their heads to the ground. They lived perfectly by protecting the cows and the Brahmanas. So that's just the beautiful way of living. If actually simply we did not kill the cows and we heard Brahmagyan from the Brahmanas, we heard Bhagavatam, Ramayana, Gita, and Puranas from the Brahmanas, and we protected the cows, we would be very happy. It's a very simple way of living. And we will lack of nothing. So therefore, they offered the Brahmanas highly. So it's very simple. So let's read the purport. Anyone can read the purport who has a good mic, or so there's no resonance. Please, someone can read the purport.
I can read.
Yes, go on.
The behavior exhibited by the descendants of Yadu in the pilgrimage site of Prabhaza was highly cultured and exactly to the point of human perfection. The perfection of human life is attained by following three principles of civilization. 1, protecting the cows, maintaining the Brahmanica culture, and 3, above all, becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. Without becoming a devotee of the Lord, one cannot perfect one's human life. The perfection of human life is to be elevated to the spiritual world, where there is no death.
Jyotisharu Prabhu, you can, oh yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. So the perfection of human life is to be elevated to the spiritual world, where there is no birth, no death, no disease, and no old age. That is the highest perfectional aim of human life. Without this aim, any amount of material advancement in so-called comfort can only bring the defeat of the human form of life.
So in the first part, when it says the perfection of human life is attained by following the three principles of civilization, protecting cows, maintaining the Brahmanical culture, and above all, becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. Yeah, we were just discussing that before we read the purport. So Brahmanical culture means actually hearing Brahmagyan knowledge and having respect for the Brahmana class of people who are teaching and who are doing, who are narrating and doing kathas and rituals and pujas. And this is a very important part. So if we just had cows, Brahmanical culture, and we practice Krishna consciousness, if you look at it, isn't that essentially what our Krishna consciousness movement should be doing? Instead of trying to develop so many strange and trying to think about Varnashram culture, we think about this is more like Devi Varnashram, and protecting the cows become also devotional service because Krishna loves it when we protect the cows, right? So, okay, read the next paragraph.
Okay. Brahmanas and Vaishnavas do not accept any foodstuff which is not first offered to the personality of Godhead. Foodstuff offered to the Lord is accepted by the devotee as the mercy of the Lord. After all, the Lord supplies all kinds of foodstuff, both to the human being and to other animals. The human being must be conscious of the fact that all foods, namely grains, vegetable meats, water, etc., the primary necessity of life, are supplied for mankind by the Lord, and such foodstuff cannot be manufactured by any scientist or materialist in a laboratory or factory established by human efforts. The intelligence class of men are called Brahmanas. And those who have realized the absolute truth in its supreme personal feature are called Vaishnavas. But both of them, accept foodstuffs, which are the remnants of sacrifice. Sacrifice is ultimately meant to satisfy the Yagya Purusha vision.
Okay, so let's say a hypothetical analysis of this. Say, for example, if you didn't have any factories for producing food right now, it's still everything that the factory is producing are actually agricultural products in terms of food, because we don't eat anything else except agricultural products.
Yeah.
Food is obtained from the land. Okay, say we did not have these factories producing these things, we will have very simple, like you see, I mean, many of you live in agricultural communities. I mean, I've been to Africa, I've seen, and it was the same in Mauritius before. And people are just, having some bananas, some plantains, some vegetables, and they buy some grain and say have some rice, or, say have some maize, some corn, and they're living very simply. And if you have cows, then you can make, from curd, you make all that protein kind of things, and then you can have yogurt and milk and nice bread, and then so everyone can live very simply, and it doesn't cost very much to actually live. Doesn't cost very much if you're living simply. If you're cooking your own food and offering to Krishna, it actually doesn't cost. What costs is a processed food, meat products, and this and that. That is actually the demoniac civilization is offering. So if you have that simple living in a village and not having plans to travel here, travel there, then that's what the Prabhupada is talking about here, the simple living and high thinking. So I think that because in our movement, the simple living and high thinking is, when you talk about that, immediately everyone jumps onto the Varnashram bandwagon. I don't think we should jump onto the Varnashram bandwagon. Right? If you have self-sufficient farming communities and we live simply, and we did not worry about, trying to reorganize societies and who is Kshatriya, who is a Brahmana, who is this, who is that, but we'll just live simply, then the Varnashram would actually look and be external to us. Right? I'm speaking a little bit from my own childhood experience. I grew up in a village. And out of all the places I visited in Ghana, one of the places that struck me the most was Sunyani, where there was my friend there, what's his name? Santanu Prabhu was temple president, and there was a mountain, there's rivers, and he had a bicycle, and he was doing Harinam in a bicycle. I really liked that. I stayed there.
Prabhu, that is in Koko.
Koko or Sunyani?
No, that is in Koko.
No, I went to Sunyani.
Sunyani is Ekat.
Oh, not Takuradi. Not Takuradi.
Ekat wasn't there that time. Prabhu is talking about, Ekat was there just about 10 years ago, or about. But Prabhu came a little bit longer than that. That was 2003, 2004.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ekat
The
was not
time.
there that time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I gave a talk about, there was a small temple, and I remember Santanu Prabhu saying to me, he said, I like when you speak, because when my Guru Maharaj speaks, I can't understand anything, but I can understand everything. And I don't know. And then I spoke about village life, and he said, oh, you have experience about village life. I said, I grew up in a village like this. And he said, I didn't have any sandals or shoes when I was growing up, and we had cows, and we would have few vegetables in the yard, and my father would be a farmer, and I grew up like this. And I said to him, I said, Vrindavan is like this, and Krishna doesn't have shoes, and the cows don't wear shoes, and it's very simple. He really liked that. So can you imagine if we were living in a place like this, we will have all the time to practice Krishna Bhakti. That's what I'm saying. And that has to resonate with more and more devotees without going into this complexity of political correctness to do with varnashram and not varnashram. I think simple living, high thinking. This resonates with me a little bit, this purport. So I'm just sharing that. What do you all think about this?
Yeah. I think I read that when I read this particular verse, I was eager to read it because Prabhupada from the beginning, when he gave the required principles required for civilization, and they mentioned those three things, it resonated a whole lot to me personally because Prabhupada has a way of writing his purport, but he specifically the way he places bhakti, devotional service, and when he goes down to start explaining what he meant by devotional service above all, was very, very catchy to my heart.
Yes, and I still have the habit, and sometimes of still not wearing shoes because I grew up 9 years not having shoes and sandals, so I'm still like, not bothered.
And okay, Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Yes,
Yes, we from this very point we're discussing now about Varnashram Dharma, I'm understanding certain things clearly because it is said that Prabhupada said he has accomplished 50% of his mission. The only 50% remaining is the Varnashram Dharma. And he has left that to his disciples. But ISKCON is growing and years are passing by, but we are not seeing the disciples of Prabhupada strongly carrying out this Varnashram Dharma process firmly and properly.
Yeah, so like I said,
been...
I understand this point, Rasavan. We talked about this, I think, before you joined, that Prabhupada did say different things at different times about Varnashram.
Yeah.
He said many things about it. And sometimes he said it didn't hamper the preaching mission. At other times, particularly when he found devotees were divorcing and children were not doing very well, or sannyasis were falling down, then he would come back to this, maybe we'll create a system of progressive advancement, slowly, and then come to the Brahmanical platform and then practice from there. So that's what he said. But at other time, Prabhupada didn't give much credibility to it.
Yes, the point I'm making is that now that I now understood properly, Srila Prabhupada, that devotional service is the essence of all, and that is what he has properly established.
Yes.
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 So that is the...
Yeah, I mean, you don't need. You don't need, and we live very small lives, very short lives.
Short life, yes.
And then also is where are the Kshatriyas and the Brahmanas powerful enough to instigate society to go by the rules of Varnashram? Children aren't born from Garbhadhan Sanskar and so on. So very interesting discussion. But I think those of our age, maybe our children, they can worry about it. But I think we should
be more focused
to the line of Srila Prabhupada and use whatever time we have and practice Krishna consciousness, not become too diverted with all these ideas, and just concentrate on being, I think so.
It's perfect.
Yeah. You got 10, 15 years left.
So in summary, Prabhu, so what we're saying is that, Varnashram Dharma is very wonderful, but the essence, especially for people who are born in Kerala, so Bhakti is the most viable path to follow. But yes, for those who cannot, strictly, the part of systematic growth using the model of Varnashram Dharma is okay, but ultimately we should focus on what is the essence. That is what we're saying.
Yes, and also Varnashram Dharma, how do you establish it when it is an Asuri society?
It's what?
Yeah, so even coming from very low background in Krishna in devotional upbringing, someone can become a pure devotee of Krishna if he takes to the process that is explained to us by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada. So I think that's important. Okay, so in the last part, it says that hundreds of delicacies can be prepared by a combination of grains, vegetables, and milk. Prabhupada is only Acharya who has done this for us. Oh Lord, it's incredible that he's actually given us a way of eating. Can you imagine what he's done for us? And he, it's like, can you imagine something like that in Srimad Bhagavatam? Other people would laugh at us, but he is actually spoon feeding his disciples and his grand disciples. So combination of grains, vegetables, and milk, so many things can be prepared. And these preparations are in the mode of goodness and we offer to the Supreme Lord. So that's Brahmanical culture. Simple living, high thinking. That's Brahmanical culture, is offering simple food, growing simple food, and hearing katha. That's what Prabhupada talks about, protecting cows, Brahmanical culture, and practicing devotional service. That's simple living, right? If we could have that, we could actually study Bhagavatam more, chant more, read more, and then we will not have so many desires and we can live simple like that. Okay, so this will end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, third chapter, Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled All the Pastimes After Vrindavan. So now opens up a different approach to this is a 4. Vidura approaches Maitreya. Okay, so we will go through that. So in here, if you have given you the overview. So the disappearance of the Yadus is still a bit of a subject here from 1, 2, and 3. And then once that is finished, then talk about the Lord met Uddhava Maitreya Rishi. And Maitreya Rishi, that is a Prabhasha. Then that is up to text 13. So we hope we can do that. Okay, so let's get going on this. So Uddhava Uvacha Athatitam Anudhyata Bhutva Pitva Cha Varuning Taya Vibhramsita Jnana Drur Trair Marmapa Prushu. Thereafter, all of them, the descendants of Rishi and Bhoja, being permitted by the Brahmanas, partook of the remnants of prasada and also drank little. So the Yadus had gone to Prabhasha. They had offered nice festival, and after the festival, like it is in most cases, people go to big festivals and big dues, and then they drink. And there is some fight. All right? This is just there. So he said, after they've done that, all the Brahmanas, everything was very nice. But then they had drank liquor made of rice, uru rasam. Now this is fermented rice. So then, being permitted by the Brahmanas, because it was kind of Mahaprasad, partook of the remnants of prasad and also drank liquor made of rice. The drinking, they all became delirious and bereft of knowledge. They touched the cause of each other's heart with harsh words. There was arguments. There was harsh words, mean not speaking nicely to each other. And if you brought up in a culture where everyone is very respectful, then even using 1 or 2 harsh words can cause a lot of disruption. In the age of Kali now, swearing and using harsh words is just standard. So they were very cultured in their presentation. They were not so rough in how they present things. Even when Dhritarashtra asked, what are the chances of my sons surviving this war? He said, Sanjaya said to Dhritarashtra, he said, wherever there is Arjuna and Krishna, and wherever there is these two, there'll be prosperity, success, victory. So he said it in a nice way. That means that your sons are not going to be victorious. So he never said to them, oh, sons are demoniac, they're going to be completely ruined. He didn't say that because that was a culture of speaking. use nice language. Even they speak the truth at all times. Satya bhuyat param briyat. You speak the truth, but you speak in a nice way. But here they were speaking not very nicely to each other because they were delirious, they were drunk. Well, this is the arrangement of the end of the Yadu dynasty. So in ceremonies when Brahmanas and Vaishnavas are sumptuously fed, the host partakes of the remnants of foodstuff after the guest has given permission. So if you're inviting someone to your house, then you have to serve and feed them. And after they're satisfied, then you take prasad. So the descendants of Rishi and Bhoja formally took permission from the Brahmanas. So then, even though they were very illustrious people from Rishi and Bhoja dynasty, part of the clan of Lord Krishna in Dwarka, and they have gone to Prabhasha for this festival, right? They asked permission from the Brahmanas, right? So the Kshatriyas are permitted to drink on certain occasions. So they all drank because they were mostly the Bhoja dynasty, the Vrishni dynasty, and the Andaka dynasty. They were mostly Kshatriyas. And there are some communities like that, where they're all Kshatriya community. And that's why it became a common thing for casteism in India. Because they would have a caste, a group of people who would be of the same community, right? So like that. Kshatriyas are permitted to drink at certain occasions, as they all drank a kind of light liquor made of rice. By such drinking, they became delirious and bereft of sense, so much that they forgot their relationship with one another and used harsh words and touch each other's heart. Drinking is so harmful that even a highly cultured family becomes affected by intoxication. So descendants of Rishi and Bhoja were not expected to forget themselves in this way. So this happened by the will of the Lord, Prabhupada is saying. And by the will of Supreme, it happened, and thus they became harsh towards each other. So I read the text too. By the friction of bamboos, destruction takes place. So also at sunset, by the interaction of the force of intoxication, all the minds became unbalanced and destruction took place. So just like two bamboos are rubbing in the forest, and there's heat generated, and there's dry leaves around, it will catch fire. So here Prabhupada is saying, when there is a need to find the forest by the will of the Supreme, it takes place due to friction among bamboos. Similarly, the descendants of Yadu were all destroyed by the will of the Lord by the process of self-destruction. Just as there is no possibility of fire occurring deeply in the forest due to human effort, so also there was no power in the universe which would vanquish the descendants of Yadu who were protected by the Lord. So one thing we learned last time about, were they a burden on the earth, or what kind of a burden were they? Remember we discussed this?
Yes.
Go on.
Yes, we discussed it. We discussed that the Yadu dynasty, because of their extraordinary strength, they still constitute a burden to the earth. But I was contending if that burden was their departure, it's going to be a burden of separation to the earth.
Because they were righteous people, they were devotees, how could they be a burden? The burden are only those who do not follow religious principles. But they were a burden, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur wrote, and Prabhupada also wrote in his purport, that they were a burden of love. And they would not be able to bear the separation of the departure of Lord Krishna. So Krishna had to actually remove them from the present existence where they were living together with him, around him in Dwarka. So they were not really a burden, as to speak, a burden on earth, but they were a burden of love. They would actually not be able to bear the separation of the Lord, so the Lord removed them for that reason. So they were not part of the other burden that the Lord was removing, the Jarasandha, the Duryodhana, they were a burden on the earth because they were dharmaglani. They were actually destroying the religious principles. Okay? So that we have to keep in mind. So then with text 3, Bhagavan Swatma Mayaya Gatim Tam Avalokyasna Sarasvatim Upasprishya Vikram Vulam Upasvisat. The personality of God, Sri Krishna, after foreseeing the end of his family by his internal potency, went to the bank of river Saraswati, sipped water and sat down underneath a tree. So Lord Sri Krishna, after foreseeing the end of his family, so he made sure that that is sorted out. And by his internal potency, he went to the river Saraswati. You know, he did his purificatory rites. Even the Lord does that. He's a supremely pure person. Quite incredible, eh? When you think about it, he will do. So Krishna will do Achman. How will he chant? His own name? Eh? Om Sri Krishna. Eh? What will he not chant his own names? Sri Keshavaya Namaha, Sri Narayana Madhuvaya. It's interesting. And sat down underneath a tree. So here, Prabhupada is explaining that the Yadus and Bhojas were executed by the internal potency of the Lord because he wanted them to be dispatched to their respective abodes because his mission was finished here. So he had to find a way of removing them. Because they were the transcendental plenary portions of the Lord, they could not be influenced by Prakriti. So he had to arrange that himself. Because these energies work in their own respective domain. They were all his sons and grandsons who were complete protection by the paternal affection of the Lord. How they could be vanquished in the presence of the Lord is answered in this verse. Everything was done by the Lord himself. So he says he's Atma Maya, by his own internal potency. Swa Atma Maya. So the Lord's family members were either incarnations of his planetary expansions or demigods from the heavenly planets. So that's why he also said that, before, that those who were his plenary expansions, some of them also stayed in Dwarka and some of them went to Prabhas. That was in the text 25 above in the previous chapter. So before being dispatched to their respective abodes, they were sent to the holy place of Prabhas, where they were performed past activities and took food and drink to the heart's content. So it was like a departure festival, like a departure festival for the Lord's associates. It was then arranged for them to be sent back to their abode so that others could see that the powerful Yadu dynasty was no longer in the world. In the previous verse, Prabhupada doesn't talk about them being a burden on the planet. In the previous verse, the Lord Ajugyata, Anugyata, indicating that the whole sequence of events was arranged by the Lord, is significant. So in that verse, it says here very clearly, Bhagavan Swatma Mayaya, Gatim Tam Avalokya Saraswati. So he says he arranged that by his own internal potency. Okay, so wherever there is a pastimes of the Lord, it is his internal energy, his potency. Nothing to do with Prakriti, does not impinge on them. So, okay, so we do text 4. The Lord is a vanquisher of the distress of one who is surrendered unto him. Thus he who desired to destroy his family told me. Thus he who desired to destroy his family told me previously to go to Bhadrika Ashram. So here who is speaking? Of course, Uddhava is speaking. And he said that the Lord, he removes distress of those who are surrendered to him. And therefore, because he desired to destroy his family, he told Uddhava, you better go to Bhadrika Ashram. And he had Uddhava a mission given in his hand. And he wanted Uddhava to be his ambassador, his high commission here. on this planet so that he would be able to narrate his pastimes and his instructions to those who would follow after Uddhava and those who are contemporaries of Uddhava. It is said somewhere in the purports also that Krishna also dispatched Uddhava towards Badrikashram because he said he spent a lot of his time in his pastimes between Hastinapur and Dwarka and Vrindavan, Mathura, but he did not go to the Himalayas. And Badrikashram is right high up the Himalayas. He didn't go on that path. And there, many saintly people would live. And Vyasadeva had his own abode there, had his own Badrikashram there. So he had that reason why he sent Uddhava. So he says here in the purport, while at Dwarka, Uddhava was warned to avoid the distress which were to follow the disappearance of the Lord and the destruction of the Yadu dynasty. He was advised to proceed to Badrikashram because there he could associate with the devotees of Narnarayan. Narnarayan Rishi are permanently there in Badrinath, in Badrikashram, and he could associate with disciples, devotees of Narnarayan Rishi. And in their association of devotional service, he could increase his eagerness for chanting, hearing, knowledge, and detachment. So he was given that mission. So 5. Tatapi tad abhipretam jnanam aham arindama pristaton vagamam bhartu padavishleshanakshama. Yet in spite of knowing his desire, my knowing his desire to destroy the dynasty, O Arindama, I followed him. So he is speaking to Vidura here, and he says, in spite of my knowing his desire, yet in spite of my knowing his desire. So Uddhava knew Krishna's desire to destroy the dynasty was there. O Arindama, O Vidura, I followed him because it was impossible for me to bear separation from the lotus feet of the Lord. So Uddhava's intense devotional service and his attachment, his ashakti to the Supreme Lord, his love for the Supreme Lord, made it impossible for him to bear the separation from the lotus feet of his master. So he followed Krishna even against the instructions of the Lord. So text 6. Adaksham ekamasinam vichinvandayitam patim Shriniketana varasatvam kritaketam aketanam. Thus following, I saw my patron and master, Lord Sri Krishna, sitting alone and deeply thinking, taking shelter on the bank of the river Saraswati, although he is a shelter of the goddess of fortune. Krishna is the shelter of the whole universe, but he is taking shelter of a tree by the bank of the river Saraswati. So there was that whole Saraswat civilization west of Gujarat, because Prabhash is in Gujarat. So further west, which means now this Pakistan, this Sindh, and then all the way up to the western frontier of Pakistan, which is Afghanistan. There was a whole civilization, the Saraswati civilization were there on both sides of the Saraswati river, which has gone underground. You can see the Saraswati river in Badrinath, you know, powerful waters coming out and then going for 100 meters and then disappears. And you don't see the Saraswati river. It has, but if you see from this space, they actually see that there is some kind of a terrain that is seen to have had a river flow before. So the Saraswati river, which is talked about so often, is not visible externally. And when the Westerners come to India, they talk about this. And these are the things that really actually cause a problem in the theory of Aryan Vedic invasion of in a theory of Aryan Vedic invasion or whatever. You know, they have a theory that some Aryans came and they invaded India and they gave all these different scriptures and Sanskrit language. This is just a whole load of hogwash, right? Because they tried to discredit the Vedic culture. They said that it came from outside, but that was never so. And like someone said last time in the class, when we were talking about mythology, no, it was in a different class. And, you know, our own intellectual, Indian intellectual do not believe in it. That's because the 200-year history, 250-year history of British occupation, they systematically destroyed the Vedic culture. They destroyed the Gurukula system. They looked down upon the Varnashrama system. They picked up a few of the things, the caste Brahminism, the sati rites, and a few of the not very nice, pleasant things, and they expanded it and they said, look, this culture is backward. That's what they have done. So it's good to think about that. So we have to go back to, you know, by Prabhupada's mercy, now Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and the Vedic literatures are being recognized worldwide. So the entire material, spiritual, cosmic manifestation is sustained by him, and therefore he's a shelter of everything. So there's nothing astonishing in his taking shelter in the way of unsheltered who are the renounced of life. So he's like kind of renouncing. The Lord is always very renounced, but he's sitting there trying to end his pastime. So Syamavadatam Virajam Prashantarunalochanam Durvischaturvir Viditam Pitakaushambharena cha. The Lord's body is blackish, but is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and very, very beautiful. His eyes are always peaceful, and they are reddish like the rising morning sun, and could immediately recognize him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his four hands. I could immediately recognize him. He could immediately recognize Krishna, you know. And why? By his four hands. Krishna is sitting there by his four hands. So sometimes in Dwarka, Krishna would show two hands, sometimes four hands. Because he is appearing amongst the earthly planet, people are two hands, so he is two hands. But some of the liberated Parshadas, they would see Krishna as four-handed, and some would see him as two-handed. You can relate to that, I hope. So I could immediately recognize him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his four hands. He said, Dorbhis Chaturbhir Viditam. And Pitta Kaushambharena cha, yellow silk garments. And also, he had different symbols. What are the different symbols? Chakra, Gada, Padma, and Sankha. Four symbols that they carry in their hands. So that's how we saw the Lord there. The Lord was sitting, taking rest against a young banyan tree, with his right lotus foot on his left thigh. And although he had left all household comforts, he looked quite cheerful in that posture. So he was very cheerful, enthusiastic, peaceful, and he was just, I think Krishna is ending his pastime, so he's said, okay, I've come here and I've done what I had to do, made all the arrangements. Now I have the sun of Krishna will set and it will appear somewhere else. Not that Krishna will, end. No, the sun of Krishna will set and he'll appear somewhere else. This pastime will go somewhere else. So he's sitting there to end his pastime and start somewhere else. Okay, so let's read. Do you have any questions or comments, please?
You can go.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, I have a question, Prabhuji.
Kamalaksha.
My question is in the keeping to the maximum of limitation play. How do we draw? How do we to be ingenious? Prabhupada also said we have to be ingenious to make the Krishna consciousness to be attractive to yoga.
Hare Krishna, let's mute everyone
How do we live
because we can't hear you.
You come like your voice is cracking.
Please.
The network is not very good. Up your video and try whether it will come better.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, but it's breaking. We can hear you, but it's breaking.
Okay.
Okay, maybe put off your video and speak. Then after you can on the video. Put off the video and speak.
Yeah, my question is, Srila Prabhupada said we have to be ingenious to make Krishna consciousness to be attractive to the Kali Yoga man. And at the same time also, the philosophy says we have to be simple living. It's important to make progress in spiritual life, in Krishna consciousness. So how do we marry being ingenious and at the same time being simple? That's my question. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Very good. Your question was clear. So we are waiting for Advaita Krishna Prabhu to.
Advaita Krishna Prabhu, you are muted.
Prabhuji, you are muted. Prabhuji, you are muted.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. When we think about being ingenious, we think about having very innovative ideas according to what is being in the culture that we live in. I think that's why you want to reconcile. So if we go back to living in a simple village life, and we are living simply there, and then how are we going to be able to affect the other portions of society? We will not be able to have ingenious means. We will not be able to use internet. We will not be able to use, modern printing press and so many different things. Yes, that is possibly true, but Prabhupada is also given us the Sankirtan movement where we are bound to do preaching work. So as an example, we should also try to live a simple life. But doesn't mean that we cannot be ingenious, because there are always going to be a portion of people who are not going to take that. But what I was thinking more, to answer your question satisfactorily, is we should also promote that side of simple living, because the facilities that are offered, and we have to use ingenious means, we have to use innovative means, that also material energy is offered to us by the material energy has given all these different facilities. These are also to be used in Krishna's service. So I don't know whether we can marry the two together. But one thing I can assure you, there's always going to be devotees who's going to become devotees of Krishna, and they will be living in towns and villages. And there's going to be others who are going to be living in cities, and you're going to be driving BMWs and Mercedes, because this is just the age of Kali. But if we live long enough, when this kind of civilization that's going on and it will start collapsing, then I think pockets of units where the Brahmanical culture is alive, and there are cows and agriculture and Prabhupada books would mean a lot of things to us. But at the present time, I agree with Kamalaksha Prabhu. How are we going to be innovative? And for example, me, I'm talking to you here sitting from Mauritius to Africa. If you just be in a village. Yeah, I agree with you, but I don't know what the answer is, because so many things will develop. And as it develops, devotees will adapt. We didn't imagine like 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, we didn't imagine we could be having Bhagavatam class from our rooms, and we didn't. Right, Kamalaksha? I mean, I never thought I'll see all of you together, sitting down and talking Bhagavatam. So Krishna will guide us and something will happen. But the ideals are ideal, you know, and Krishna will reconcile the opposing elements, I think. And things will happen. Like, you know, we are meant to study Srimad Bhagavatam. Now we are all very busy. People are busy. They have to go to work. They have to do this. They have to do that. Prabhupada has given us the Bhakti Vaibhava program. And look, now 3 hours, 6 hours a week, we are studying Srimad Bhagavatam, which is like listening to Srimad Bhagavatam class every day, an hour in the temple, or even more. Because in these 6 hours, we are covering 15, 20 verses. In the Srimad Bhagavatam class, you'd cover 1 verse a day. Right? So we're doing. So something will happen. I don't know what will happen. But devotees will always use the intelligence to preach and to develop the Krishna consciousness movement. Chaitanya Prem Prabhu, you want to say something? I hope I answered you, Kamalaksha.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. I just thank you very much, Prabhu. I just wanted to contribute that now the principles be the focus will be on the principle of Yukta Vairagya. Yes, Yukta Vairagya. These are principles.
Nice angle. Nice angle. Thank you for reminding me. Very nice. Yes. Yes, the principle should be in Yukta. You want to say more? Go on.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Let's carry on.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Madhuvan.
Yes, Rasavan.
Yeah, I also think the principle of Isavasya also enters here. Because everything practically belongs to Krishna. So in this age, this is where Krishna has brought us. And these are the facilities he has given us. The essence is to use everything for his service. So,
Prabhuji, you are muted. Sorry.
Yes. Yes, we can be Isavasya, God-centered. We can be simple in our own life and still use everything else for service to Krishna, which will be Isavasya and then Yukta Vairagya.
yeah.
Yes, very good point. Yes, thank you.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna,
great.
Prabhu.
Yes, Madhuvan.
I think in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that his devotees are experts. So, which means, whatever the circumstance, situation they find themselves, they will be able to cope. So, we have to be mindful of the circumstance, and conditions. So, but whatever the condition, one will be able to render as service, devotional service. So, and I think that's part of the example we are given in the previous text that we read. We don't have to go to the place of pilgrimage, but the service of Krishna is very, very important, very, very vital. And those who are advanced to understand that. So, even if we are in the city, we can still be simple and still make sure we're able to discharge our devotional service.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Simple means also living simply within our means and not endeavoring over and above everything. But when we think about also innovation and we think about being ingenious, we see how Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he actually very nicely combined Yukta Vairagya with all of that. He was expert in it. And those who were really simple and living very simple life were actually Jiva Goswami and Rupa Goswami. Right? But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Rupa Goswami did talk about Yukta Vairagya, which is part of our understanding of nectar of devotion and so on. But then they lived a very simple life. They had abandoned all their ministerial duties. Tyaktva Turnamashesha Mandalapatim Shredim Shadatu Chavat, Kopina Kanstasitu, they had taken loincloth. So they were really renounced. They were living. But then an interesting thing just come to my mind, I'd like to share it before we move on, is simple, is even though they had adopted such simple life and they had written the book, that's what I'm thinking, how ingenious it is of Krishna, not of us, Kamalaksha, but how ingenious it is of Krishna that those devotees who wrote, abandoned all the facilities they had, he gave out boats and boats of gold coins away, adopted loincloth, but their books and what they wrote are being studied today. That's it being ingenious. That's being ingenious. So Krishna will reconcile.
Yeah.
You know, they and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur created the printing press. So that's what I'm saying. The acharyas will find a way. We can reconcile it. But it's a very nice discussion. Thank you all. Okay, let's move on. Text 9. So Tasmin Mahabhagavato Dvaipayana Suhit Sakha Lokanucharang Siddha Asasadha Yadrichaya. At that time, after traveling in many parts of the world, Maitreya, a great devotee of the Lord and a friend and well-wisher of the great sage, Krishna Dharma Vyas, reached that spot out of his own perfect accord. So while Vidura is asking these questions when they met by the bank of Jamuna, and Uddhava is answering the questions to Vidura, that he is narrating that I met my Lord sitting in the banyan tree by the banks of Saraswati in Prabhash. And after he had arranged for the dispatch of his associates in his pastimes, and he was sitting cheerful, peaceful, I came to meet him. At that time, out of some arrangement of some sort, Maitreya Rishi came to that same spot. At that time, after traveling in many parts of the world, Maitreya, a great devotee of the Lord and a friend, he was a great devotee of Lord Krishna, and a friend and well-wisher of the great sage, Krishna Dharma Vyas. He was a friend of Dharma Vyas. So he was older. Vidura, being son of and Vidura is still being a little bit even older than Uddhava. And Maitreya being one generation older than Vidura and at least 2 generations older than Uddhava. So then they are meeting here with Krishna sitting under a young banyan tree by the bank of Saraswati River. So you can imagine this now. Okay, so purport. Maitreya was one of the disciples of Maharishi Parasara. He was Parasara Muni's disciple, who was the father of Vyasadeva. Right? So they were like god brothers, so to speak, Maitreya Rishi and Vyasadeva. Right? They were of the same age group. Thus, Vyasadeva and Maitreya were friends and mutual well-wishers. So by fortunate accident, Maitreya reached that place where Lord Sri Krishna was resting. To meet the Lord is not an ordinary incident. Maitreya was a great sage and learned scholar, philosopher, but not a pure devotee of the Lord. So Maitreya Rishi was a Jnana Mishra Bhakta, so to speak. He was coming from the platform of Jnana because he was a scholar, philosopher, not a pure devotee of the Lord. And therefore, his meeting with the Lord at that time may have been due to Agyata Sukriti, very deep philosophy here. How can he meet the Lord if he's not a pure devotee of the Lord? But because of having done some pious activities related to devotional service unknowingly. That's what the meaning of Agyata Sukriti is. If you have given some cow or some charity to some person not related to devotional service, that will be pious activity. Punya. But what is the difference between punya and Agyata Sukriti? Is you accepted some prasadam from someone, and that prasadam was cooked by a pure devotee and offered to Krishna. Or you may have given a donation by taking a book, and that donation has served the cause of a pure devotee building a temple or something. So these are Agyata Sukriti, which is different than Punya. So because of Agyata Sukriti, Maitreya Rishi found himself in the association of Krishna or some unknown devotional service. That's what Prabhupada translate Agyata Sukriti as. Unknown activity in relationship to devotional service or unknown devotional service. So pure devotees always engage in pure devotional activities, and therefore their meeting with the Lord is natural. Those who engage positively in engagement of Krishna Bhakti, devotional service, they will meet with the Lord, or they will meet with the deity, or the pure spiritual master, and so on. But when those who are not up to the standard meet the Lord, it is due to some unforeseen fortune of accidental devotional service, which is Agyata Sukriti. So you have, I hope you understand this. So we move, okay? So we move on to text 10. Tasyanuraktasya munir mukunda pramoda bhavanada kandarasya ashinvato maamanugaha hasa samikshaya vishramayan nuvacha. Maitreya Muni was greatly attached to the Lord, and he was listening in a pleasing attitude with his shoulder lowered, with a smile and a particular glance upon me. Having allowed me to rest, the Lord spoke as follows. So it's a very beautiful scene. He was attached to the Lord. He was listening with a pleasing attitude, and with a smile and a particular glance upon me, upon Uddhava. Having allowed me to rest, the Lord spoke as follows, and the Lord speaks to both of them here. So let's read this. It's a very interesting episode showing how the Lord relates to two different persons. One being a pure devotee, very intimate and affectionate, and the other one being a senior, elderly person, not so much inclined to pure devotional service at this point. Let us. Okay. So although both Uddhava and Maitreya were great souls, the Lord's attention was more on Uddhava because he was spotlessly pure devotee. So yes, Maitreya is there. A Jnana Bhakta, or one whose devotion is mixed with the monistic viewpoint, is not a pure devotee. This is the position that is being described in relationship to Maitreya Rishi. Although Maitreya was a devotee, his devotion was mixed. And we talked about that earlier in the beginning of the class. The Lord reciprocates with his devotees on the basis of transcendental love and not on the basis of philosophical knowledge or fruitive activities. So the Lord's language with his pure devotees is love, prema. In the transcendental loving service of the Lord, there's no place for monistic knowledge or fruitive activities. So pure devotional service is completely free of jnana and karma. That, and what is that verse in Nectar of Devotion that talks about this? Describes Uttama Bhakti as Jnana Karmadi Anavrittam Anukulyena Krishna. Right? Yeah, Bhakti Uttamam. So pure devotional service is described as Uttamam. So this is also devotional service, mixed devotional service, but it is not Uttama Bhakti. The highest is pure devotional service. There's no mixture of fruitive activities, no mixture of jnana. Right? So in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, there's no place. So the gopis in Vrindavan were neither highly learned scholars nor great mystics. So they were not Yoga Mishra, Jnana Mishra, or they had no fruitive activities. They were pure devotees of the Lord. They had spontaneous love for the Lord, and because became their heart and soul. And the gopis also became the heart and soul of the Lord. Lord Chaitanya approved the relationship of the gopis of the Lord as supreme. Here, the Lord's attitude towards Uddhava was more intimate than with Maitreya. Just like his attitude with the gopis would be more intimate than even Uddhava, so to speak, because they would be more intimate than him. Yes, Prabhu, Rasavan, what is your question? Your arms up, your hands up? Or is that a mistake, or you have a question?
Oh, okay. It's just a phrase in the main sentence that I want you to enlighten me properly on. With his shoulders, with his shoulder lowered, with his shoulder lowered. What does it properly mean?
It means that he had his head bowed. Not like, he's in a humble mood like this.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Not standing with nose in the air, but rather bowed head and the shoulders down when your head is down, like that. Okay. So, okay, we'll read now text 11. Okay.
So what I
here,
want to express here, I think this should teach us when we are before superiors, our composure, how we should behave.
Oh, yeah, I mean, some etiquette has to be there.
Yeah.
Because Maitreya was in front of the Lord and he had deep affection for him. So he was acting like that. He knew that Krishna is a great personality and Supreme Lord. So let's move on to the next text, 11, because I want to finish in 10 minutes. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. So just remember, Bhagavan Uvacha, 11, 12, 13. Okay? It is actually the Lord speaking. Okay, here. So Lord Krishna here speaks to Uddhava. He speaks to Uddhava. Okay? And later on, we will have a very beautiful episode related to this, which will bring a lot of very devotional attitude of Vidura when he hears about his meeting with Maitreya. So we'll talk about this now, this verse. Vedaham antaram manasipsitam te dadami yat duravabhamanye shatre pura vishwashijang vasunang matsiddhikamena vasotya yeshta. O Vasu, I know from within your mind that you desired in the days of yore, when the Vasus and other demigods responsible for expanding the universal affairs performed sacrifice. So he is addressing Uddhava as a Vasu. He's one of these Vasus, one of the category of demigods called the Vasus. So Lord Krishna is addressing Uddhava as Vasu. O Vasu, I know from within your mind that you desired in the days, old days, when the Vasus and other demigods responsible. So when you were doing these universal, performing sacrifice for the progress of universal affairs, right? You particularly desired to achieve my association, he's saying. So he said, you particularly wanted to have my association. He said, the Lord is saying, but this is very difficult to obtain for others, but I award it unto you. So he's saying to Uddhava. So if you read the purport, he said, Uddhava is one of the eternal associates of the Lord. And the plenary portion of Uddhava was one of the 8 Vasus in the days of yore. So it's like Uddhava is a combination of 2 personalities, so to speak. First, one of the eternal associates of the Lord. And on the other side, he is a plenary portion of Uddhava, was one of the 8 Vasus in the days of yore. This principle has been brought up understanding the associates of Krishna in Dwarka. There would be a combination of a certain demigod with one of his associates together, and they would be enjoying these pastimes with the Lord. The 8 Vasus and demigods in the upper planetary system who are responsible for the management of the universal affairs performed a sacrifice designed to fulfill their respective goals of life. At that time, an expansion of Uddhava, acting as one of the Vasus, desired to become an associate of the Lord. The Lord knew this because he's present in everyone's heart as Paramatma, the super consciousness. Okay, so Prabhupada talks about the super consciousness, the Paramatma, who gives memory to the partial consciousness of every living entity. The living entity, a partial consciousness, forgets incidents of the past life, but the super consciousness reminds him to act in terms of his past cultivation of knowledge. So this verse is there, 15:15, Sarvasta Chaham. So the Lord in the heart, he knows your mind, and he will remember things that you had desired before and you had forgotten as the passing of different lives, but he doesn't forget, right? So here he says that the Lord, therefore, now he desired to fulfill this desire of Uddhava. So we may not have some information about it, but he does. So the Lord actually informed Uddhava that this was the desire you had. So by saying this, he is actually preaching indirectly to Maitreya Rishi by saying that it is important, therefore, to have the desire to have the association of the Lord, because he was coming from the Jnana aspect. So text 12, O honest one, your present life is the last and the supermost because of this term of life you have been awarded by my. So he's saying to Uddhava, this is your last. So this life as a Vasu, of course, as a previous Vasu, because this is an associate of the Lord combined with the Vasu. So now you can go to my transcendental abode Vaikuntha by living this universe of conditioned living entity. Your visit to me in this lonely place because of your pure and unflinching. So even though Krishna had said to him, don't come with me because of what's going to happen, it's going to be distressing, I want to protect you from distress, but Uddhava had followed Krishna all the way up to Prabhasha, and therefore he's seeing this situation here. And now he's telling him that this is going to be your last life here. So he is going to be awarded the kingdom of God. Okay. So so let's move on to text 13. O Uddhava, in the lotus millennium, in the days of yore, at the beginning of the creation. Now it's a very important point. I will end the class on this today. I spoke unto Brahma, who is situated on the lotus and grow out of my navel, about my transcendental glories. With the great sages describe our Srimad Bhagavatam. So listen to this carefully again. So in the lotus, in the Padma Kalpa, in the beginning of creation, and the first is where the Lord actually allows Brahma to appear on the lotus. It's called the dawn of creation or the beginning of creation. The first kalpa is called the Padma Kalpa. That's why it is said in the lotus millennium, right? And in the verse there, it says, Pura Maya Pruktam Ajaya Nabhe Padme Nishannaya Namadi Sarge. Sarge means in the beginning of creation. Okay, so what does he say? He said, I spoke unto Brahma, who is situated on the lotus that grows out of my navel. So Lord Krishna is speaking as a person who is Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. Lord Krishna is speaking as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. He said, the navel that grows out of my navel, Brahma, who actually take birth on that lotus, I spoke unto Brahma about my transcendental glories. So how did he speak to Brahma about his transcendental glories? This is Krishna speaking, Lord Narayan speaking, Dwarka Krishna speaking, which the great sages describe as Srimad Bhagavatam. And Krishna is saying about that, it is Srimad Bhagavatam. Now you see the connection of Uddhava, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Krishna, why he presented his pastimes in the Srimad Bhagavatam for all of us. Very important verse. right? And what was that Srimad Bhagavatam that actually Lord Krishna spoke to Brahma? How is it called? And where did you study this?
The Chatusloki.
It's Chatushloki. It's second canto, 9th chapter, 33, 34, 35, 36.
6.
Right? These 4 verses, which means the Srimad Bhagavatam in a nutshell. Chatushloki Bhagavatam. Aham mevasam evagre nanyat yat sadasat param pastad aham yat hitakcha yo vishahet sosmiham diteyartam yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta chatmani, and so on. It's a beautiful 4 verses. And those 4 verses were spoken by Lord Sri Krishna directly to Lord Brahma, he's saying here. So it's a one Lord in different expansions, and he remembers everything. So let's read the purport. The explanation of the Supreme Self as given to Brahma and already explained in the second canto of this great literature is further clarified here. So Krishna is speaking about it again. Okay? And the Lord said that the concise form of the Shema to date his personality, which is Srimad Bhagavatam, the beautiful story of the Supreme Lord personality. So he said that I'm speaking about my personality. Who am I? Through Brahma to all of you, obviously, through this Chatushloki Bhagavatam. So the impersonal explanation of these 4 verses of the second canto is nullified wherein it's not that Brahman or some impersonal energy spoke. Krishna himself, he spoke. So Siddhartha Swami, explain in this connection that the same concise form of Srimad Bhagavatam concerns the pastimes of Lord Krishna. It has everything in it, Chatushloki Bhagavatam, including the pastimes of Lord Krishna. And it's not an impersonal indulgence. So then Krishna will carry on. Uddhava now will speak in text 14. So Uddhava overwhelmed, Uddhava glorified and prayed to the Lord in this situation. And Maitreya was there. So it's a very interesting meeting. Please keep that now in mind. It's a beautiful episode of this Srimad Bhagavata Katha here. And we will discuss next Wednesday morning. Okay? We will discuss how Uddhava glorify and praise to the Lord, and how after hearing from the Lord, Uddhava then decided to follow the instructions of Krishna, and he starts on his journey to Bhadrika Ashram. So this is what we're going to study, and you have your overview, so you can obviously see that. So we will end the class here. If you have any questions or comments, I hope that has been clear. We haven't been going too fast, and given the time to appreciate and study.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for your time, for your down-to-earth explanation. We're so grateful and blessed to have you.
I'm happy to see you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I request
Any questions or comments?
Prabhu, your hand is up.
Good to hear from you.
Yeah, Prabhuji.
Rasaman, yes.
Yes, we heard Krishna telling Uddhava about his desire since the time of yore. Now, many a times we see the practice of devotional service in this one particular life. Taking this scenario of Uddhava, as Krishna is explaining, what did happen that some of us are just beginning the devotional service, or we got the opportunity to start practicing the devotional service from this lifetime, and then in subsequent life we will continue, or is it necessary that we should be judging ourselves that we are ending the process just in this lifetime?
Well, that is up to the individual, no, Rasavan Prabhu, because the mercy is there, the instructions are there. How we take to that process, with what enthusiasm, how much we grab, and how much we surrender to the lotus feet and grab the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord in our heart, will determine how long it will take. The intensity of our approach, the intensity of our surrender, the intensity of our devotion will dictate how long it will take us, whether we'll make it this lifetime or we will require some extra injury time to score the, I don't know.
The thing is that those who you see they are practicing this purely claim themselves to not to be pure.
Yeah, because the humility of the devotees are there.
Yeah. So when we take it in comparison to us who are not in any level, we see that we give hope to ourselves that maybe in subsequent lifetime we can improve.
Yes, the essence is always remembering Krishna. We have to remember Krishna. Yeah. And I think studying Srimad Bhagavatam, after a while you will see that you will not be able to forget Krishna at all.
Yeah.
He will become just like, are you conscious that you're wearing a shirt now? You're not. No. But you wore a shirt in the morning and now you're wearing a shirt or a kurta. So it will become like this, that you will have Krishna permanently in our lives, thinking about it. Even though, we may not be so strict practitioners, sometimes after a long period of time, sometimes we may neglect a certain aspect of devotional service or whatever, but Krishna will always be there. And that is the most purifying aspect of bhakti. So whatever situation we are in, just remembering Krishna, hearing about Krishna is the most important thing. And Bhagavatam gives us the opportunity to you see, every topic is so intricately woven to make us remember Krishna. And Srimad Bhagavatam does that because he plays with your intellect from this side, and then relate it to your day-to-day life. And therefore, Bhagavad Shravanam is very important. I think that, okay, the Bhakti Vaibhava is one side, but just hearing Bhagavatam, now I was even thinking maybe, we should, I have one of my friends here, this Mataji is a very senior teacher, and she studies Gita and Bhagavatam, Madhu, in Mauritius, and she listens to all the classes. So she's listening. And it's good also to encourage other devotees to join, maybe Ashita and whoever the older devotees, just come and hear. They can be just as observers. They can hear and hear Bhagavatam, sitting comfortably in your home for a couple of hours. It makes a big difference to our lives. Okay, so thank you. Anyone want to say something else? We end. One last comment or question. Chitra Prabhu, you wanted to say something?
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm okay.
Hare Krishna, Jai Shri Prabhupada. We'll end here. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Rama Rama.
Advaita Krishna Prabhu ki jai. Thank you all students for being in class today. We look forward to seeing you on Wednesday, Ghana time. His Grace Yaduna Prabhu.
Did Yaduna come?
He came just not long ago. He just joined us briefly.
Yadunat.
What's happening to Yadunat? What's happening to Yadunat?
He has left us.
Yadunat is excluding himself. He has excluded himself. And we agree very soon. Hare Krishna.